Peace to the family, y'all. Peace, love, and light. Peace, peace, peace. Get a sip. Peace to the family, y'all. Peace, peace. Welcome back for another one. Welcome back. Whew. Peace, y'all. This one is gonna be heavy, right? This one is gonna be heavy, but I will make my intention to state before I begin that I wanna make sure that I'm doing this in peace and love and with the intention of peace. I wanna set my intentions before I begin, because this is whew, it's a lot going on. Yeah, it's very pleasant where I'm sitting at, you know what I'm saying? And I need to be in an environment like this to remind me of what a state of peace looks like. I've been hashtagging protect your peace all week. You know what I mean? And yeah, we're definitely at that place. I knew that I would be opening up my my app, and I would be seeing the bodies of dead babies and things of that nature, whether I opt in for it or not. You know what I mean? Those images just always seem to find their way to the timeline, and there's no filtering system, you know what I mean, that keeps dead babies off of the timeline. So I already knew that I was going to be seeing some of that. You feel me? I'm not looking forward to it, but I definitely have encountered some of these images. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we're at a precipice. We're at a moment in time where the only thing that I can offer that I feel that is of value is, is perspective, right? Putting things in perspective, dealing with a level of context. You know what I mean? Putting things in perspective and affording the family some context. Now, there's a lot of things that I'm potentially gonna say today. I'm gonna produce a lot of information. I'm not necessarily producing conclusive information, meaning that I want you to think for yourself. I'm not here to tell you how to think. That's not necessarily my job, right? If anything, what I do is I show you how I arrive at thoughts that I think without imposing those thoughts on you, right? But the methodical process about how to actually come to a thought and come to a conclusion, I'll lay that out. So you're not like mystified to be like, damn, well, why do you see the world like that? Why do you think like that? Why do you speak like that? You feel me? I'm kind of laying it out, right? So today in particular, today is the Indigenous Peoples Day. It has been renamed Columbus Day. You feel me? They renamed it Columbus Day, and now it's called the Indigenous Peoples Day. So my heart, is always going to be with indigenous people, right? Because that's what I come from. That's what's in my blood. That's what my bloodline is. That's who I am. I don't want to be anything other than that, right? Bar none. I don't want to be anything other than what I am. So I don't identify in things that are not necessarily for me, things that are not, things that are not, how can I say this? Because, society will formulate and fix a box for you to jump into and for you to live in, right? And we get so confused. Yes. So shout out to Slauson Girl. And let me speak to this, Lawson girl. And herein lies the problem, right? Because we have been amalgamated so much as a people, right? Again, you saying that your people in Los Angeles, people here, where I'm at, don't want to hear me identify as indigenous, let alone what's going on, you know what I'm saying, on the West Coast. So let's take the West Coast, for example. No, that box definitely becomes your prison because it has been fixed and formulated for you. There is cages attached to it. They know the income and they know the outcome of, you have a particular threshold when it comes to that box. You can only go but so far. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to create a box for you that you can potentially break out of, or that you can formulate and use that box to become something, you know what I mean, a little bit more dangerous. Nobody's going to do that. They always want to protect themselves from you. That's why they build boxes for you to volunteer to show up in. So when I lived in Los Angeles, which was 10 years ago, I used to live downtown Los Angeles, right? At one point I was living downtown. So when you go downtown to the train station and you go downstairs to the train station in Los Angeles, y'all gotta help me out. What the name of that train station was that was on 4th? No, was it 4th and Spring? I lived on 4th and Spring. So this train station was the station that, services downtown LA. And when you go downtown and when you go down in that train station, there is a pictograph on the wall, right? A mosaic display of a man called Governor Pico, right? And Pico was a melanated man, what they call an Afro-Mexican, right? And then Union Station, yes, that they named Pico Boulevard out. Yes, Pio Pico is the name of the governor initially, a deeply melanated man, right, who was part of the contingency of 44 Afro-Mexicans that became the initial settlers, right? They call it Queen City. It's in downtown Los Angeles, and this is where the initial settlers, what they call the settlers, right, settled in Los Angeles. Now, they're not telling you nothing about the indigenous people that were there prior, right? So that's even a false premise. You mean that somebody showed up and they settled Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, and there was nobody there prior to them? There definitely was people there prior to them. But most telling, right, is that and again, Pingucci, if you take exception to that terminology, again, this is how they frame, right? This is how they frame the people who, quote unquote, founded Los Angeles. They call them Afro-Mexicans. There was 44 of them, right? 22 of which were distinct, quote unquote, of African descent. You know what I'm saying? And I believe the other ones were amalgamated. But nonetheless, right, there was a settling that took place of some individuals that, bear resemblance to us. They you know what I'm saying? And then, when you go further into Mexican history, as I have, I traveled to Mexico in 2012 to Cozumel, and we were met by a man named Carlos, who was our tour guide. And he threw away the script when he encountered us. I have the videos on YouTube or Know the Ledge Media. You can still find them. And under Pyramids of Mexico or Cozumel, KTL, you can research it. And he got on that bus and he told us the whole history, right? He said, look, just like the continent, Mexico is just like the U.S., Mexico is considered a United States. There's 53 ethnic groups that make up what we consider to be Mexico, of which he said the mother of Mexico would be the Olmec. And he said the Olmec is your people, right? So he said that you people are the mother civilization, and there's plenty of war in Mexico fighting these truths. You know what I'm saying? This is something that's not unanimously agreed upon in Mexico, because there is a great contingency of ethnicity that are coming out of these regions that have been amalgamated by conquistadors. So they are the children of the conquest, right? They're the children of the conquest, and they don't necessarily have that shared history with you. You know what I'm saying? So they're fighting the real, they're fighting the reality. They're continuing the crusade to bury the truth, right? Because they don't have any intention on giving anything back. So they have to further conflate the truth with lies, right? Or half truths. Okay? So we know that there's indigenous populations. We know about the Yucatan Peninsula. We know that there's melanated populations that came there. We know about the Abu Bakr trips. We know about all of that. All of that stuff is part of the historical record. You know what I'm saying? We know about Tabasco. We know about the melanated Mexicans that exist in these places to this day, still, right? And Carlos was so nice to bring us to villages where we were able to meet some of these people. You feel me? So I'm saying all that to say that we always find ourselves in a situation where we're going back and forth, right? And yeah, if you've been to the prison systems, you understand the issue with the Mexicans. They got northern and southern Mexicans, and they have an internal rift that they're fighting amongst themselves based on amalgamation. To this day, they still are fighting that fight. These are the children of the conquistadors. You feel me? I tell people all the time, can you imagine a Puerto Rican not speaking Spanish? Can you imagine a Dominican not speaking Spanish? Can you imagine a Mexican not speaking Spanish? You feel me? None of that is their native tongues, but you can't even identify them without the linguistics. Here's the fact that they're called Hispanics or Latinos. Those are not people. Those are identifications of languages. You speak Hispanic. You speak Latin, right? You're not a Latin people or a Hispanic people. How you gonna call yourself Puerto Riches? How you Puerto Rican? No. You're Tiano or Arawak, right? You're Tainos. You feel me? Okay, language as ethnicity. You're an Englishman then? Granted, I'm just saying let's run it through the ranks. Like, we don't speak American, we speak English. So are you an Englishman? Right? So like what Brother Truth been saying, we all British, we all Englishmen. Algonquin is a language, but are we Algonquins? Or do we have distinctive names of our tribes, right? We have ethnic identities that specify specifically who we are, so we can retain our identity. Your identity is not necessarily your language. Your language is part of your identity. But people are identifying themselves as language. You know what I'm saying? And because the conflating is taking place, we don't know what we're looking at anymore, and we can't identify one another. So if a person comes to you and they say that they're Jewish or they're Gooish, because I don't want this to get flagged, you know what I'm saying? How can you identify who's Gooish and who's not? You say, oh, they speak Hebrew. Well, a lot of them speak Yiddish. They don't necessarily all speak Hebrew. You feel me? A majority of them speak Yiddish. So are they Yiddites? Right? Is that a race? It's not a race. Nor is it necessarily an ethnicity. It's a religion. Or you could even say a customized way of life. You feel me? Where somebody that can speak English can still be considered a quote-unquote a Jew. You know what I mean? Because they practice the customs, the rights, and the traditions. You feel me? So we're mixed up to a degree because we don't necessarily know what we're looking at. Yeah, and we will, Slauson Girl. I honor your work. I love what you're doing as a journalist, and I would be honored to do a live with you one day. You know what I'm saying? To bring a level of normalcy and peace, especially between the black and the brown thing. You feel me? When I was in LA, I was doing a lot of advocacy work, just by teaching Mexicans history about Mexico. Just by teaching Mexicans Moorish history, right? That was my level of advocacy that was opening up channels that we could have normalcy, conversations and relations with people who we got more in common with than we do. And they become very impressed when you know their history, right? They become very impressed when you know their history, right? And they're willing to listen. So I was able to do some things. But way more things need to be done because it's getting out of hand. So it's almost comparable to what we see. And this is a far stretch. And I'm not going to make that comparison because it's too far of a stretch. Right? It's too far of a stretch. But yeah, we gotta, for those of us that can, you know what I'm saying, we should be attempting to do better with bringing, you know what I'm saying, our brothers to the table. You know what I mean? It was real aggressive the last time that I visited LA, and they was having, you know, it was active out there, right? So they was, and you know, when I lived out there, it was active in terms of, you know what I'm saying, I was constantly hearing about they was running down in one another's neighborhoods, and if you get caught on their side, X, Y, and Z, you know what I mean? Yeah, like, you know, they was putting in work, is what I'm saying. There was a lot of work getting put in on both sides. And then the issue with the vendors was real, right? And I experienced that when I was vending at Venice Beach. You know what I'm saying? I witnessed the quote-unquote Mexicans jumping black vendors. You feel me? I witnessed all of that. I witnessed them packing them out. I witnessed them running them off the strip where they couldn't hustle. I seen all of that stuff taking place. And we advocated on behalf of brothers, especially the ones that was willing to fight back. And they was able to set up and hold it down. But I never had none of those issues. You feel me? And it don't make me better than nobody. It don't make me impervious to the issues because people that look like me were still engaged in those issues. And it's almost like it was almost an offshoot of gangbanging. Like they was almost like born into it. So they couldn't see the diplomacy factor that I was approaching. They only knew how to get it on with one another. They only knew that it was on site. They only knew that, yo, if you in my space, I'm going to run you out. You know what I mean? And, you know, apparently, unfortunately, our people was outnumbered, right, out there. And we don't necessarily come together to hold one another down. So this shit was embarrassing. Like, our folks was getting washed up in those situations. And then, yeah, then it was taking place on the vending level, on the street level, right? Because just like in Harlem, just like in New York, where it's super aggressive towards street vendors, if you melanated specifically, but you will see, you know, elderly Mexican women, the abuelas, they are pushing carts that have built-in burners on top of them, and they're making sausages with fried onions out in the street. Then they got the ones with the mangoes, you know what I'm saying, with the motherfucking hot sauce on them. Then you got the ones with the shopping cart selling chulos. They don't get the level of regulation that we do, right? Our folks getting run down. You try to sell some socks, they're gonna bottle you up. They're gonna run you through the system. You feel me? And it's not just NYPD is impervious to Mexicans or other ethnicities, because the Africans is outside selling Rolexes, my nigga. What year was which part? I lived in LA from 2012 to 2015, but when I seen what was going on lately, this was probably 2021. No, I'm dead ass. You can't sell socks in New York City if you are indigenous to that place. But if you come from Africa, my nigga, you could sell Gucci, Chanel, Fendi. You could be 7 foot, black as night with yellow eyes, and you outside selling Rolexes. Now, I mean, just tell me if I'm lying. Tell me if I'm making this shit up. Tell me if I'm wilding. Tell me if I'm, going outside of the margins of reality. Nigga, am I telling the truth or not? And them Africans are 7 feet tall. They too big to hide. They ain't hiding from nobody. And I don't want to say it to make it an area of contention. You know what I'm saying? There's just obviously a different policy in this country when it comes to people that are indigenous to this realm, right? And I'm not saying that the quote-unquote Mexicans are not indigenous to the Americas, and this is all technically America or a Mexim to a degree. But if we live within the confines of this construct called the U.S., right, and they have these fictional borders set up, and they got all of these policies that they're coming at us with, you feel me? Then that's the metric in which we have to play the game. So we are attempting as best as we can to play the game by the rules to a degree, right? And we're losing at the game that we're playing because once again, we see that the game is fixed, right? We see that the game is fixed. And it's leaving us in a very precarious situation. Now, and the precarious situation is that we are flustered in the middle fighting one another. Just like how you see them flustered in the Mideast fighting one another. But the framers of particular policy, right? The people who set up the chessboards, the people who push the pieces on the chessboard, they don't never get to smoke, right? They don't never get to smoke. The scope is never makes its way back to them. Right? It never makes their way back to them. Meaning that the church was responsible for the upheaval over here in the Americas that have converted indigenous people of a Mexico, let's say Mexico, right, into all of these diverse ethnic groups. And then they did the same thing over here where indigenous people who were native to this land as well as indigenous people who were taken from other lands were all brought here, right? And then there was an admixture, and you can't even find yourself in the soup because it's so mixed up. So you're looking to find your identity in something that's so scrambled, right? But the dignity of your identity has been denuded by the very people who tell you that they did this because of your dignity. Look, we want to make sure that you get to heaven. We want to make sure that you got an opportunity to be at the right side of Jesus Christ. We want to make sure that you get to give your life to Christ before you die and go to damnation. How are we going to damnation if God didn't even know that we was over here and we existed? How's God omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnipotent if he didn't know that there was an entirely different hemisphere to the other side of the world that he created, that he gave man dominion to, right? It took niggas millions of years to figure that out. But there was life over here, and the life that was over here was highly advanced, right? And who do you attribute that to? Because people always want to attribute the level of their genius to say, oh, I'm the chosen child of God. Look at my bread, right? Look at my wood. They do measuring tests, right? The measuring test in this society is, I got the tallest buildings. Feel me? I got the tallest buildings. I got the most money, right? That's the piston test over here, right? That's the measuring test. But what about architecture? What about science? What about arts? Right? Those have always been clear indicators of intelligence. Those have always been clear indicators of you have mastered your lessons down here and you figured out micro and macro. Because in order for you to build architecture to that degree, you have to be proficient in the arts and the sciences. You have to understand the human anatomy, because those buildings are macro to micro, meaning that the architecture is an extension of us understanding principles about ourselves that we now build into our outer shell, which is going to be architecture. And then the means in which we go about constructing these particular structures has not been figured out yet. But the adversary is so advanced, or he's so favored by his God, why he can't build them things. Why to this day, with all of his technology, right? He's convinced you that he can go all the way to Mars, but he can't build a pyramid. And there's pyramids on Mars, and there's all kind of stuff. Everywhere that he encounters our level of intelligence that does not come necessarily under the conscription of what you would call the God of the Abrahamic religions, because all of these things predate him. Now, I'm not on here attempting to knock nobody's religion, right? I do want to say that religion has been usurped and co-opted for man's desires, right? Clearly. Let's look at this thing that got us in the situation that we're in to begin with, right? We're so argumentative against one another, and we can't see the forest for the trees, but we don't got beef with one another. You feel me? They using us as buffers for the people who we really should be focusing on, right? And in this particular case, it would be the church. And then we'll get to the church and the crown is really who we looking at. Okay? And then we'll get to Palestine and we'll speak about that. But let's speak about the Americas first, because that's where we at. And today is the celebration of Columbus Day, right? So, this is the doctrine of discovery. Okay? This is the doctrine of discovery. This is the first piece of international law. It was passed by the Pope in May 4, 1493. The Pope was Pope Alexander VI, right? And it was a year after, quote unquote, Columbus allegedly came over here and, quote unquote, discovered the Americas. That's a whole nother discussion. Right? That's a whole nother discussion. But this particular observation dealing with the doctrine of discovery will show you the nerve of religion. It will show you the nerve of the church. It will show you how the church has weaponized religion for conquest. What I've been speaking about, that when Constantine adopted Christianity in the 300 ADs, and he was the emperor, he figured out a way to continue empirical conquest by merging the church and the state and saying that we will now rule in this sign, and the sign that they used was the cross. You feel me? And then they went all around the planet utilizing, right, Christianity as a cover to take people's shit. So this is an excerpt from the Papal Bull. And again, this is from the Pope, Pope Alexander, right? Wherefore, as becomes Catholic kings and queens and princes, after earnest consideration, especially of the rise and the spread. So they was chasing the Moors still after the Crusades, right? And they was rising up against Islam, spread by the Moors, who they call heathens and Saracens. Okay? Hence, heartily condemning in the Lord, that is your holy and praiseworthy purpose, and desirous that it be duly accomplished, and in the name of our Savior be carried into these regions. We exhort you very earnestly in the Lord, and by your reception of holy baptism, whereby you are bound to our apostolic commands, and by the bowels of the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ, enjoy strictly that inasmuch as with eager zeal for the true faith that you design to equip and dispatch this expedition, you purpose also, as is your duty, to lead the people dwelling in these islands and countries to embrace the Christian religion. Okay? So he was deputizing the kings and the princes and their contingencies to go around the planet and spread the faith of Christianity at the edge of a sword. Is get down and lay down, right? That when they introduced these doctrines, because they were supposed to come to the shorelines and read this stuff to the indigenous people that they encountered. If the indigenous leader of said sect did not acquiesce to the demands that was being read to them and accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior on the spot, they were to be killed, right? And their belongings were to be plundered. Their women were to be raped, right? And they still was going to be put into the throes of Christianity. Now, this is how Christianity was spread through the Americas specifically, right? And around the rest of the world. So when indigenous people who still got muscle memory, who still are tapped into those Akashic records, who still can recall the pain, right, of that being forced upon them, when those people choose to rise up against their oppressors and defend the honor and the dignity of their name and their blood's sake, then we get what we get today, and we hear what we hear about people being called cowards and terrorists and baby killers. And people are always killing babies during war, right? There's nothing peaceful about war, y'all. I don't want you to be fooled, right? They assigned Africa and the rest of the Eastern Hemisphere to the Portuguese, right? You'll see up here they say Cape Verde. If anybody knows any Cape Verdeans, you know that they are thoroughly amalgamated with the Portuguese, just like the Brazilians are. So they went to Brazil with this. They went to the Cape Verdes first, right? With Preston John and them. Okay? And then the Spaniards came over here to the west. And they conquered the Western Hemisphere with the West by way of the Western powers. Right? Discovered and to be discovered beyond that said line towards the west and the south, be in the actual possession of any Christian king or prince up in the birthday of our Lord Jesus Christ, just pass from which the present year 1493 begins, and we make a point and deputize you and your said heirs and successors, lords of them, with full and free power, authority, and jurisdiction of every kind, with this proviso hereover, that by this our gift, grant, and assignment, no right acquired by any Christian prince who may be in actual possession of said islands and mainlands prior to the said birthday of our Lord Jesus Christ, is hereby to be understood to be within or taken away. Withdrawn or taken away. Right? So they're laying out the legal framework for Christian monarchs to come into indigenous people's lands that they would be encountering for the very first time in their historical record. Right? They've never encountered these people. They've never met them before. They didn't even know that they existed, allegedly. Right? Their first encounter with them, before you even find out what they on, is to find out whether they resonate with the Jesus that you identify with, and if not, kill them and take their shit, right? And this ideology, these concepts, these precepts, because this set the precedent, right? This set the precedent of all international law, and this is the legal binding document for white supremacy to this day. Now, as of recently, right, sometime in March, 44 days after me and Red did our lecture, our last When in Rome lecture, right, the church turned around and they repudiated the doctrine of discovery. They just did this, right? Pope Francis just did this the other day in March. Feel me? But the repudiation of it is not the denunciation of it, because the denunciation of it now opens them up to an unprecedented amount of class action lawsuits and all different sorts of legalities, because the only way that they have acquired said lands, right, with a portfolio of the crown and the church, right, outside of what the Rothschilds and them got, they have the most impressive portfolio on the planet for real estate holdings. This is shit that they have stolen, right? These are lands that they have stolen. These are treasures that they have stolen. You feel me? They got to give that stuff back or account for it if they denounce it and they no longer have the cover of the oldest piece of international law, which is called the Doctrine of Discovery. And the way that we know that it's still a part of international law is because it has been used in court cases by the Supreme Court up until very recently. The Oneida Indians versus the state of New York. That was the latest. The very first one was the McIntosh. Right? It's a court case. All right, there. We can pull it up right here. Right on time. Shout out to you, Blue. Shout out to you, Blue. So what began as a religious decree in the 1400s then became the basis for a legal concept in the U.S. when the Doctrine of Discovery was invoked in a 1823 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that indigenous people had only rights of occupancy, not ownership, over lands they had lived on. The land then was open for the taking. You understand? You understand? So this has become the legal documentation and the precedent that has been invoked and utilized, okay, to take indigenous people's shit from them with legal standings, right? Even though we know that there's nothing legal about any of this stuff. Okay? This was initially, once again, it came from the Pope, from the Church of Rome, and the Church of Rome was able to hand over permission, because the Church of Rome, at that time, the Pope was the most powerful person on the planet in the Western world. Okay? In the Western world. And the Pope allegedly has the power endowed upon him from quote-unquote God himself. The Pope is the vicegerent on this planet for the word of God. Do you understand that? You understand that? Or do I need to give it further interpretation about exactly what's going on with these people and their alleged power? Right? This is what they believe about themselves. Right? And this is the danger of not contesting these concepts if they stand as law, right? It gives these people the ability to do the things that they do and move the way that they move. Legally. Okay? So, again, they utilized or they invoked this particular doctrine in a very recent Supreme Court case that was invoked by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right, who they call Notorious RBG. She's recently made transition. She was a liberal member of the Supreme Court. She was not necessarily the person that you think that this would come from. She wasn't Clarence Thomas. She wasn't Justice Roberts, right? She wasn't none of the conservatives. She was a liberal, and a Jewish one at that. And she invoked the doctrine of discovery in this particular case recently that came up against the Oneida Indians to take their land up in upstate New York. Right? Mindset of cultural racial superiority allowed for that objectification of subjection of people and strongly condemns any attitudes or actions that threatens or damage the dignity of the... Okay, so this is the statement that was released by the Vatican, right? What was significant today is the statement repudiates the very malignant worldview that gives rise to the onset of the papal bulls, something like that, right? Bishop Douglas Lucia of the Diocese of the Syracuse of New York said he believes the statement will lead to more dialogue. The call to walk side by side is especially poignant in this land of the Onondaga and Haudenosaunee, where there exists the two-role wampum, Lucia told NPR via email. Right? So, I mean, again, this is just legal documentation about ways that they have jerked indigenous people, you feel me, since they got here. And they continue to confuse them and conflate them by tying them up in court with these particular pieces of standing international law that no one is able to get around. So the Intercatera is what Intercatera is the Latin name for this papal bull called the Doctrine of Discovery that came into existence May 4th, 1493. This is why we're here today talking about Columbus Day or Columbus discovered America. It was all about the Doctrine of Discovery, which is the legal binding document that powers white supremacy. Okay? Or conquest from the crown and the church. So this is another conquest that took place by way of the crown and the church, right? Britain was responsible with the Balfour Treaty or Conference for establishing the state of Israel in Palestine post-World War II. Britain did that. Not God, not a vote by sitting nations, right? The Bible didn't do it. Okay? It was a result of politics. It was a result of a decision that Britain made. You feel me? To house these people. Okay? And as a result, they intruded upon a land that was already occupied by occupants. The same way when they came over here, they intruded upon a land that was already occupied by occupants who were already living there, who already had a historical record established there, even if they weren't the indigenous people to the land forevermore. Same as over here. The First Nations said that there was structures already structured when they got here. The mounds was already built. There was civilizations that existed prior to them. They even know that. They acknowledge that. Over here, they acknowledge that. Over there, they need to acknowledge it as well. But I think even the Arab population knows that there's a much more indigenous strain of what's considered to be, with Wesley Muhammad called in his book, Black Arabia. Right? The Arabics go back to a African stock. Okay? There's no such thing as the Middle East, y'all. It's an extension of Africa. I don't know if you've seen a map of this shit or not. Right? But all of this shit is right above Egypt. There's no such thing as the Middle East. That is a political term, right? It doesn't exist geologically or geographically. That's a political term. But historically, right, those lands were part of the continent. You feel me? And they were melanated people that were the original inhabitants of said landmass. So, regardless of what's going on there today, you know what I'm saying? That's not how things started. Nonetheless, those people are the rightful inhabitants of said land, right? Because they've been there. They've been holding it down. But the UN and Britain and you know, the US, of course, the crown and the cross, right? So the British crown and the church, for the most part, are the ones who established the state of Israel post-World War II, right? While the Americans were acquiring all of the Nazi scientists via Operation Paperclip and sending them down to Argentina or Patagonia, down in South America, right? While they were busy doing that and getting all of their top scientists to create all of these different spy agencies and shit like that, right? Partnering with the Nazis. Then they was turning around on the other hand, right? And they were establishing the state of Israel in somebody else's homeland. Feel me? Yes, it's not only is it on the continent, but it's on a part of the continent that's exposed to the mantle of the planet Earth. I'm gonna play this video that I had posted last week. I think that it's appropriate enough because the sister was speaking on this particular area of the planet. So when you see these bombs dropping and you see these buildings falling, you feel me? Keep in mind the precarious nature of, you know, of the planet that they're dropping this stuff on. Keep in mind, you know, the reverberations that this may potentially have. Come on, sis, where your video at? Yes, and the British are definitely Germans, right? So look at that, right? So the Brits who come from...
Thank you, Sir Lassie, for making this comment, because it really allows me to expand deeper upon the wisdom and the knowledge that literally lives in my blood and bones from my foremothers. Not only that, though, the knowledge and wisdom I have come to see, I have come to be a living witness of in my own research, in my own pursuit of truth. You see, in 2020, while the whole world was losing its marbles, all in disarray, and the United States was pulling back its troops from the Middle East, Scientific American, Business Insider, NPR, and several other institutions, NASA included, all released articles stating that they now know, or they've now discovered, that 85% of the water on Earth is not from this solar system. It's not terrestrial to this solar system. It was brought here by a rogue planet called Theia. Theia is what they've named her. And the Earth's mantle is actually what tethers the Earth to the moon. It's a molecular and atomic tether, not a gravitational one, you see. These are some of the deeper wisdoms that and awarenesses that my foremothers have known for a long time. You see. And none of this stuff is actually new information. It's just being calculatively released to the public because it's been known for millennia now. Nevertheless, we are not terrestrial. No life on Earth by its definition in terms of the base molecular components that make biological life. It's not terrestrial. It's not from here. Go look it up. Start there. Because there's a lot that a lot of people don't know. But yes, we are not inherently from this solar system, which means that the fundamental base components that build our biology are not terrestrial, which means that at the most basic level, what makes us us came from somewhere else altogether. But you see, that's just one part of the mystery. A lot of people don't know. You see, they use all this code language like the promised land and the right to the land of God and all that. No, you don't understand. Where the Middle East is located is actually a very special geographical location, because the earth there is not actually terrestrial. The earth there is actually the land, the surface land in the Middle East, is actually a piece of the earth's mantle, which protrudes from the earth, right? And so the traces of where water really comes from is in the earth's mantle. So the traces of how biological life itself originated on this planet, in the solar system as we know it, are in the earth's mantle, you see. And in the Middle East is one of the only places in the world, besides the oceans, where the earth's mantle actually protrudes and rises out of the earth itself, so that it can be accessed from surface ground. Because most of the earth's mantle is in too sensitive of spots to extract from and to study. Many of the natural disasters and storms that have been happening across the planet have been because they have been attempting to extract samples of the earth's mantle. You see, that is what all the research in Antarctica is actually about as well. Extracting the oldest remnants of Earth's water. And then in the Middle East, it's about extracting the oldest remnants of Earth's mantle. You see? Because if they can understand what creates life from the most basic fundamental level, they can re-erect life itself under a whole new class and order system, under a whole new circle of life, if you will.
So, she ain't lie. Right? I did my research. You feel me? 3-dimensional density, upper mantle in the Middle East, interaction of diverse tectonic processes. I mean, you know, it's a hell of a read because it's science papers, but you can access this information. I got a bunch of it, and I've been doing my research, and she was hitting on something that's right on top. You know, it's right on point. Yeah, please do the research. Pull up some of this stuff yourself and see what's being said, because it blew my mind when I started doing the research. Like, wow, it's like I ain't know this. It was right in front of our face. I ain't even know this. So yeah, it was some interesting research, you know, that's available on the topic. Mantle density, heterogeneities, in particular in the upper mantle, are closely related to tectonic processes. First of all, density constraints produce significant stresses. So there's a lot of stress in this region because of how it is geographically located, right? There's a lot of pressure in this region, right? This region has always been it's always been in heavy contention, because there's a natural amount of pressure that always is going to exist here because of the fact that it's mantle and tectonic plates is moving and shit like that. So there's always going to be accelerated and extra stress factors in this region. There's always going to be stress and strife in the Middle East just because of its quote unquote Middle East, just because of its geological factors that make the shit up. You know what I'm saying? Micro, macro, as above, so below. So, you know, why would God choose as his home, his holy land, you know? And this is a rhetorical question, because the answer could very well be in the question. You know, why would he choose such an unstable land as his land out of all of the lands that he can pick? You know, all of the beautiful places on earth that, you know, that we call home. Why such a place that is so rife in confusion and conflict? You know what I mean? A place that, you know, is has been subject to war after war after war after war after war after war. You feel me? One would have to ask, why would this land of all lands be God's land? It's not tropical. It ain't like the continent. It's not mineral rich to a degree that there's just so much wealth in it. It's a very barren land. But it's what's considered to be the promised land. So it's in so much heavy contention. You know what I'm saying? And it's always seemed to have been that way. Yep. Stargate technologies were definitely taken from Iraq. Right? So what we see as evidence as well is the day that this popped off, there also was a sizable earthquake in this area, right? There was a lot of seismic activity right in this area in Afghanistan. Okay? Afghanistan earthquake pops off same day. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's making these connections. 2,445 people. It did not only just affect Afghanistan, it affected Iran, which borders Afghanistan. So this earthquake went into Iran as well. Is this a natural seismic activity, or is this something that was induced as well? What took place on that region on that day that compounded all of these factors, right? Because there was substantial seismic activities. There was 2 major earthquakes that day. 2 of them. And 2,000-something people died. That's more than on both sides of that conflict in a war. Why is nobody talking about that? And all of this took place in Afghanistan on the 22nd anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, which definitely aided and assisted in destabilizing this region. Right? And what the byproduct of the destabilization of Afghanistan is now the opioid epidemic right here in this country, right? So what exactly did they go in there for? Because, shit, they could say, yo, they eradicated Taliban, but that's not true. Taliban is still around to this day. They exasperated the amount of heroin that was being produced that the Taliban was initially responsible for mitigating, right? They made sure that the production of heroin was kept to a minimum. Not no more, right? They destabilized them and got them out of the way, and the U.S. soldiers were protecting poppy fields. Now, I know that you know niggas who went over there. I know that you know niggas who was in the war. Why don't you ask them? Because they told us. I did my own research, but they damn sure came back over here and let us know. Yeah, we was protecting poppy fields over there. You know what I'm saying? How, Sway? So, on the 22nd anniversary of the invasion of Afghanistan to look for Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, right, as a result of 9/11, which Israel said that this is now their 9/11. You see how they tying this shit together? Right? On the 22nd anniversary, they have an earthquake which pops off at 11/11, which 11 plus 11 is 22. Right? Hey, shout out to 444. Look at you. Look at you sneaking up on me like that. Right? So look at this region. It said the seismicity of Afghanistan is attributed to the complex and active tectonic interactions between the Arabian, Eurasian, and Indian plates. Right? So this entire region is sitting on tectonic mantle crust activity in this region. You feel me? And it's all kind of stuff popping off. I'm going to give you another one. Not only was this also the anniversary of Afghanistan, we already know it was the 50-year anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, right? We know that. What we didn't speak about is it was at the ending of Sukkot, right? And I'll tell you what Sukkot is in a minute. Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles. I've been speaking about the Feast of Tabernacles quite some time, especially like a lot last week. We were speaking on the Feast of Tabernacles. What is this? All right. So the Feast of Tabernacles, or what's called Sukkot, is the 40 years that they spent when they when they left Egypt. They was in the desert for 40 years, right? They was in the deserts for 40 years until they went into their prescribed land, quote unquote. Right? So the 40-year process, remember 40 years there's a lot of correlations in the book that deals with 40 years. 40 years also means quarantine. Quarantine means 40, should I say. 40, right? It could be 40 days, it could be 40 years, but quarantine means a process of 40. Right? Yeah, so hip hop and Yom Kippur, both 50 years. So the Yom Kippur War is when Egypt attacked the Israelis with the assistance of the Syrians. Okay? And then this was an extension of the 6-Day War from 1967. Okay? Which was when the Israelis initially went and snatched the land. There becomes West Bank settlements and things of that nature. That was in the 6-Day War in 1967. 67 to me is always a number that's synonymous with Jewish people because that's Ralph Lauren's number, or Ralph Lipstick. He's a Jew from the Bronx. Okay? And he came out with his clothing brand in 1967. So as an avid wearer of Ralph Lauren, I would wear RL67 a lot. You know what I'm saying? Coincidentally, I had my 67th sermon yesterday. So as we look at the Egyptians ran them into the desert during Sukkot, Sukkot. This was after their expulsion from Egypt, after Moses petitioned Jehovah to get involved, right? To use his magic to convince Pharaoh to let his people go. Only to turn around a few years later and allow Sheba to come and influence the children of Israel. Only a few years later, they're going to turn around. And when the same thing happens with baby Jesus, and King Herod was looking to kill the firstborn, they sent him into Egypt. So they're running from and always running to Egypt. And Egypt now is saying what? They said that we ran to them and told them 10 days prior to this that there was a potentiality for Hamas to strike. And they said that Netanyahu waved them off. Right? So that's going to be a major area of contention. They're denying it. And that all comes down to intelligence briefings, right? But ironically, when they attacked them during the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur, they were, just like the scene shows, they drove them into the desert. Coincidentally, right? They had to cross the burning hot sands. They said that they were in the desert for hours attempting on foot to flee back to to Jerusalem. Right? Because the attack came from the paratroopers, and the festival that the Jewish people were attending was not too far away from the Gaza Strip. Right? So they ran them back into the desert. This is a identical mirror to what took place 50 years ago, and also what they were celebrating, which was a festive celebration from something that happened allegedly thousands of years ago. This is their ceremonial practice. None of these people that are practicing Sukkot today were the indigenous bloodline of the, what you would call, you know what I'm saying, the Hebrews of back then. And I'm sure, like, you know, because I lived in New York, and even while I'm in Atlanta, I live around a considerable Jewish community, right, where I'm at. So you would see them build the houses outside their crib. If you lived in their area, you know what I'm talking about. They build a little house in a lawn or the yard, right? That is in practice of the Sukkot, which is also considered the Feast of Tabernacles, which is inclusive of these 4 pieces of plant. There's these 4 plants that they invoke. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many correlating, overlapping coincidences or things that are worth noting or pointing out. It's not that they don't make sense. You know what I'm saying? The way that this stuff is lining up, it just needs to be observed and put into perspective as it's very cyclical. You know what I'm saying? The cycles are very identical. This individual right here is a warmonger. He's a war hawk. Regardless of what's going on in Israel, we have every right to identify people for who and what they are. He is a corrupt politician. He's a criminal, just like many of the politicians that are on the world stage today. You know what I'm saying? That have, for so many, you know, in so many words, they have the fate of the world at their hands. They're all openly accused corrupt criminals. Majority of them got open cases. This nigga's no different. He's no different. He's Trump and Biden wrapped in one. When it comes to the criminality factor, being accused by his own government of corruption, right? Having to step down because of the corruption, going to court because of it, and then coming back, running on a campaign, getting back into office, hostile, with an ultra-conservative cabinet, and then they had the whole country, you feel me? They had the whole country in peril because they had the shit split in half, just like America is right now, because of the court cases and the fact that he wanted to change the judiciary. He wanted to change the law. And we are in Libra season, dealing with all things lawful, all things justice, and all things balanced. Okay? So this individual who's a warmonger, I remember him from many, many moons ago, right? Saying deplorable things about how they felt about America, what they were going to do, what their plans were to destroy America ultimately as part of a larger Zionist plot. Now, while I may be accused of whatever I may be accused of, nigga, I come with receipts. Feel me? So it's very hard to get around verifiable truths. So we're talking about a people, mind you, this time last year is when, October 3rd, 2022 is when Kanye started his rant, right? Because October 3rd was the day of the Paris fashion show when he had on White Lives Matter. But on the front of the shirt was Pope John Paul II, a Polish pope, okay, who also utilized his position as the pope to fund a secret war in Poland. Okay? He funded a secret war in Poland, like how they fund the IRA to fight the British Crown. He was funding, or he was involved with paramilitary fighters that were fighting for their revolution out in Poland. That's why Sinead O'Connor wasn't pumping with him, not only because of that, but also because of the child sexual allegations. So she tore his picture up on Saturday Night Live. This was on October 3rd. She did it October 3rd, 1996. Kanye appeared October 3rd, 2022 at the show, ironically, with the shirt on. And then later on, months later, he would get into the fracas in a situation where he can't even mention these people by their name. Now, if all of this shit is popping off globally, and we got all of these incidents, I can't even say Jewish on my motherfucking channel. Because you got a people on the planet that's so delicate. You got a people on the planet that think they're so fucking special and so differentiated from the rest of us, I can't even mention their name, yo. Now, only the devil move like that, right? The biggest devil that the lie told us he doesn't exist. And you can't even call him by his name. The only person I know like that outside of that is God, who don't have a name that you can mention. You can't even speak about these people. But yet the fate of the planet is now in their hands because they want us to be so fucking compassionate about some colonizers. Sorry. I'm sorry. But every time they got a fracas or situation in Palestine, I got to watch footage of babies' brains blown out on my timeline. Palestinian babies. Right? From a land that they were positioned and put in by the British Crown with little to no regard for the people who occupied that region prior to that. Now, as being here in the Americas and having indigenous blood in my vein, I can understand that. And I can understand the frustration that comes with that. And you seeing these motherfuckers party on your land and disrespect and desecrate your sacred sites continuously. And you like, yo, something needs to be done, son. Yeah, it could be the Rothschilds. You know what I'm saying? It's still an air of arrogance that anybody who considers themselves chosen above other people, all of those people adopt a mentality and an attitude and an arrogance to them that they feel that they're better than other people. I understand. I read all of the texts and I lived around them, so I know how they feel about the Goyim. This is not a conspiracy, my nigga. This is real. This is real. They cannot write that off. Right? So let's see what was said. America is a golden calf and we will suck it dry, chop it up and sell it off piece by piece until there is nothing left but the world's biggest welfare state that we will create and control. This is what we do to countries that we hate. We destroy them very slowly. Benjamin Netanyahu, 1990. Now, this nigga's a 44 resonator, so I know what he's capable of, right? He is a war hawk. And that's what you're going to see with the war hawk. And not only is he a war hawk, he's surrounded by an ultra-conservative cabinet who have been fomenting at the mouth to go to war for the longest, right? To utterly destroy and annihilate not just Hamas, but Palestine, because Hamas are stateless actors, meaning that they don't represent necessarily a state. Because there is no state of Palestine, first of all. But second of all, even if there was a state of Palestine, yeah, we could say, oh, they hold particular seats in office, but they're not considered to be this. They're not the military of the state of. You understand? The Palestine don't have no military. So it's inconsequential to say, if you're going to war against Palestine, you're going to have to go to war against the Palestinian people because they don't wear uniforms. They're insurgents like when they went into Iraq, right? You're fighting a people who don't identify themselves by any insignia. So you can't help but think, oh, all of them are embedded in the population. You are at war with the people of Palestine, and it shows. Right? So the desecration of holy relics, centers, right? And a internationally agreed upon place of worship that is shared between all three Abrahamic religions is the Temple Mount. And it is agreed upon that there's certain things that you can do there and there's certain things that you can't do. This is law. Okay? So what Netanyahu did is he impaneled the most extremist elements of his government, the ultra conservatives who have wanted to build the third temple. This would be Solomon's temple, y'all. This is the move that President Trump puts in place right before he leaves office that allows him to speak about Jewish people however he wants, because he moved, okay? He moved the consulate, I believe, from one place to another. And that particular move, that initial move, sets up them from taking the next step, which is consecrating the construction of the third temple, right? And all of this stuff is a sign of all-out war as it communicates to other sides and other religions what this means. Oh, you're going to desecrate our holy site? Are you going forward without unilateral permission? So who's the people sitting in the midst of all of this? Who's the only ones that can negotiate? The fucking Pope. It all comes back to the Pope. Now, the Pope is impaneled in the Vatican right now with the Synod, which is like their congressional meeting amongst all of their senators, which would be considered their bishops and cardinals. And why do they meet? They're having a 2-year synod to decide the future of the church. Right? This is their check-in session. You feel me? So they're impaneled right now in the Vatican. Right? But in the U.S., they're not impaneled because the House is in disarray because they just fired the House Speaker. So there can be no resolutions that are unanimously passed by governing bodies here in this country because they're not impaneled, and they cannot be impaneled until at least 2 weeks because they don't have a speaker. Ironically, right? Coincidentally. So only Biden can call shots. Now, I asked y'all the other day, who do you think runs this country in terms of, and I was very specific. I said, who do you think reads the intelligence reports daily and based on the geopolitical situations that are going on globally, make strategic plays? Who do you think is making the economic plays for this country? Who's making the militaristic plays for this country? Who's making the domestic policy? Because the domestic policy plays are tied into the economy. Yo, the workforce. Are we addressing the things that need to be addressed? What's going on with student loans? What's going on with the healthcare system? You feel me? You think that Biden is doing this? I'm just asking, my nigga. Like, I now really need to know what you think. One thing we knew about Trump, right, is that he wanted to be involved with everything. Even if he wasn't reading the daily intelligence reports, he was looking at the TV. And he may have been sourcing his opinion from bad sources, but at least you know that this nigga was the only one sourcing and he was off script. So whatever script they were writing for him, he was not following the script. Do you not understand that that was the whole problem to begin with? That they like, this nigga's off script. He's not following the dictates. He's not reading the script. He's looking at the teleprompter and doing his own thing. That was their issue with him. They couldn't control him. Who you think? You think Biden is the one that's making the decision? Oh, I'm going to send the military. I'm going to send aircrafts. I'm going to send warplanes. We're going to drop bombs. We're going to do this. We're going to send billions of dollars. You think that he's the one that's still making these decisions? And this is what I'm saying. And it's dangerous either which way. If he is the one making those decisions, we in trouble. If he's not the one making those decisions, we in trouble. Because the thing is this, and it's never been an issue, ironically, right, of dual citizenship. If the top lobbyists, if the top corporations, let's just take Larry Fink alone, right, who is the CEO of Vanguard. Let's just take him alone. Let's not even go to the other CEOs. Let's not even do that. Let's not even go to the Zuckerbergs of the world. Let's not even do that. Let's go to Fink. Let's go to Vanguard. Let's go to BlackRock. if this Jewish man is controlling a company worth $30 trillion, and let's say he got a dual citizenship to Israel and the Americas, in the U.S., right? Who send billions of dollars to Israel as if that's a vassal state of the U.S. anyway. Right? Why has it never been a conflict of interest to say the corporate sponsorship of America, mainly of which are Jewish, and this is not a conspiracy theory, and I'm not reaching because we can run the stats, right? We were able to do the research because of all of the fracas last year. You're forced to know who your adversary is. If these people were telling me that they were so motherfucking selective and so special on the planet that I could not mention their names, I'm like, damn, I got censored. I can't say C-19. I can't say the Jat. There's certain things I can't say online. I'm still shadow banned. But you got a whole group of people that I can't say their names. But then I'm being told my history from these same people. Like if I go on DJ Vlad, right? And I ask a nigga, yo, why did you say that Jewish people were a race? Because that's what he said in one of his interviews when he was arguing with somebody about the efficacy and the importance of Jewish people and why they should not be even spoken about in hip hop by melanated people specifically. Yeah, he said all of this. He said that they was a race. My nigga, you are a Khazarian Jew. You're a part of an ethnicity that comes from the Caucasus Mountains. What are you talking about, my nigga? What are you talking about? So, and this is me attempting to help correct him so he don't make he already spoke it on an international platform because he said it on his channel. But I'm like, damn, I would not want you to be out there in the world representing such a misstep, because that is, you could really step into some shit. And it shows me a lot about what you think about yourself, that you think that y'all so special that you a race. And that you're not an ethnicity who adopted a lifestyle and a culture from people who were amongst you at one point. Because if you go back to where the Khazars are from, if you go back to Germany, right? Because you got to study the Ashkenazis, and recently a lot of research came out on them. And I'm talking about last year, around the same time that this fracas was popping off. They found an ancient burial ground for them in Germany, right? I think it was even in Bavaria. And what the ancient burial ground showed, because they was able to extract dental records, they said that these people don't have no ethnic diversity. They all kept it within the family. So there's not a lot of differentiation when it comes to the ethnic stock that the Khazars come from, or the Ashkenazis. They are inbred, just like they are in New York. If you go to Rockland County, and I'm not saying nothing that should be considered inflammatory or disrespectful. I swear I'm speaking the truth. You could say you don't like how I'm speaking the truth, right? But I'm being respectful and I'm speaking the truth. All of this stuff is verifiable. You can Google it. I wish I had my iPad. I will pull up the article right now, screenshot it and send it to myself. But the Ashkenazis, they found ancient relics recently, and they were able to run the dental records on them and see that there was no ethnic diversity. But what they did find is that these people were, what's the word that I'm looking for that Francis Wilson would use? They had genetic defects. You know what I'm saying? How can you be a superior people with genetic defects? You feel me? You can't be a genetic superior people with genetic inferior defects. You know what I'm saying? So it just, and it was talking about blue eyes and everything, and they was showing just clearly that they come from where they come from, and it's okay to come from where you come from, but you can't have the whole mantle. It's not yours to have, my nigga. You picked up something that somebody put down, gratitude, and you have been holding that shit close to your chest ever since, because that is the very thing that you utilize to hold form and to move around the world, right? That's your passport. That's what opens doors for you. That's what got you a whole motherfucking country in the Middle East that you not from. Right? Because you held on and you was holding form, and you had to pay for assuming somebody else's identity. Now think about this, y'all. They had to pay for assuming somebody else's identity, right? Hitler was like, okay, that's who y'all say that y'all are, right? I'm going to wash you up. I'm going to ethnically cleanse you, right? And then you adopt somebody's identity and you come into the Middle East. And you get everything that comes with adopting that identity. So now you are thrust into a war that has been going on for so long that our heads would spin if we try to trace back the origins. Because again, 50 years ago, they was getting ran down on by the Egyptians. Right? My nigga, 5,000 or 500 years ago, they was either running down on Egyptians or getting ran down on them. Right? That's the continuous story all through the Bible. With the Jewish people and the ancient Hebraic people more so. And again, even calling them that, because that's identifying somebody with their linguistics. Hebrew's a language. Right? Who are these people? Who are these people that so much of the world revolves around, but we know so little about? And at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? If this is going to disrupt, because it's been disrupting our lifestyle for a long time. Ever since I've been alive, I've been hearing about this shit. I'm tired of it, actually. You feel me? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing about this shit. We don't got no stock in this. Other than the fact that, we have been forced to be observers of it. And very well, we could be looking at what's considered to be biblical prophecy playing out. Now, are they forcing the script, or is the script playing it out? I told you last week where we were showing you astrological alignments to say, yo, this shit come right out of Revelations 12. Look at what's going on with the sign of Virgo. Oh shit, they got an asteroid in the stomach of Virgo called a child. Man, this is some real deep biblical shit going on. Oh, look at the motherfucking Osiris Rex spacecraft last landing on the Bennu asteroid, and then they bring all of the contents down on the 24th of September when we go into Libra, and they land in Utah, the home of the Mormons, but ancient indigenous land. Utah's the bottom of an ocean. Utah's where all of the mineral riches come from. So to get to extract mineral sediments off of an asteroid, and then you land them in Utah where this ancient land is at. There's a lot of shit overlapping one another. So what really exasperated the situation is last week as well, they were attempting to sacrifice an animal, a goat, at the Temple Mount. And that's a no-no, right? That's a violation of international code. Because all people that are familiar with this conflict know that when you violate the Temple Mount, right, that shit jumps off. It jumps off tension that is very deep-rooted, because these people are tied and they're tethered to their religion and their beliefs. And I cannot knock or fault anybody for that. If that's what you do and that's what you want, then that's what it is. But we should not be forced to, get the dust blown in our face because of your dust ups, based on y'all not being able to motherfucking see eye to eye based on what your religion is, my nigga. So the Temple Mount, right? The most highly contested religious site in the Abrahamic religion, right? The most highly contested place, right? They have been attempting for quite some times. And these are the radical, ultra-Orthodox elements of the Israeli government that have become impaneled by Benjamin Netanyahu. They are now part of his government. And one of the people that he has given an unsurmountable amount of leverage and power to is an individual who has been dying to violate the Temple Mount and exasperate issues around it. So once again, here they go gaslighting, right? Because they'll never say, oh, we were prodding the bear and then they motherfucking pop back. And now we're going to utilize that as an excuse to wipe them off of the face of the earth so that we could really build the temple and infuriate the rest of motherfucking the Muslim world. We in for a long one, y'all. We in for a long one here. Right? And none of it has nothing to do with us. Ultimately. Right? None of it got nothing to do with us ultimately. Jewish fanatic group calls for slaughtering animal sacrifices at the El Aqsa Mosque courtyard for Jewish Passover. Right? This is from March 31st, 2023. Right? They was already putting it out there what they wanted to do. For Passover. To do what? To consecrate the lamb's blood so they could put over the houses of Jewish people to make sure that when the plague comes, the plague of death that snatches the firstborn, this is what they utilized in Kemet, right? In order to let their people go, they wanted to consecrate this particular sacrifice, you know what I'm saying, to align themselves with this ritual. And they keep getting shut down. Right? This shit started in blood. Right? This shit started with a blood sacrifice. Or blood thirst for a blood sacrifice. And now look what it has brought about. Right? A ilmatic sacrifice with a lot of blood. A lot of blood. A lot of blood will be shed. So this is, I believe, October 3rd, right? This was last week. Israelis seeking to sacrifice lambs on Temple Mount was arrested. The time has come to build a Jewish temple and renew the sacrificial rites, the NGO said. You have to know what's going on, right? Why do they want to build a temple? What are the sacrificial rites? I've been speaking about this shit every Sunday in my sermons. Every Sunday. Damn near, because it pops up every Sunday in scripture, in the Torah. I would ask the black Israelites, can you explain this to the rest of us? Because I don't want to be attempting to explain something that very well I might not be thoroughly versed in. I'm going to give you my interpretation of what I read. Right? I want to know from y'all. I want to know from y'all what the sin offerings are. I want to know from you what the guilt offerings are. I want to know from you what the peace offerings are. I want to know from you what the wave offerings are. Right? Because there's a lot of animal sacrifice that they're speaking about in the Torah. And then when Jesus comes, he replaces animal sacrifice with human sacrifice. Him being the Ebo, or the human sacrifice that is the sacrifice of all sacrifices to end all sacrifices. Right? So they're ready for prophecy. They're ready to bring back what they call the Mosaic, or their Moses. And again, me growing up in Brooklyn, I have an intimate knowledge of this shit because I was raised on it, even if I wasn't trying to be raised on it, because of the motherfucking Hasidim that were surrounding our neighborhoods. I always used to have to see them goddamn vans passing by when they was talking about the return of their Messiah. You know, I would observe all of this shit in Eastern Parkway and Crown Heights when I would be around these people making observations. And then I studied motherfucking esoteric Judaism by way of Kabbalah. So I kind of, you know, I got a smidget of an understanding of some things. Right? So what's going on with the animal sacrifice and why they would be willing to start a war to push this animal sacrifice through? Whole lot going on. Your first 44, we're going to see a lot of 44s. I seen a lot of 44s in this already. I just ain't post them all. But, yeah, it's a 44 bonanza. This is definitely a 44 bonanza. So, you got to understand what the size of Gaza is. You know what I'm saying? And again, you know, I'm like, as an audience, are we supposed to be held as a captive audience while we watch these people utilize all of the force and the might that they can muster up to destroy a section that's 25 miles long, that's so densely populated, it's like 2-point-something million people in there, right? Who you think that they killing? Who you think that they killing? I know who they killing. They know who they killing. Right? Okay, you just came back from, a partner of mine just came back from Israel not too long ago as well, and he had nothing but good things to say about it. Right? And look, man, I know Jewish people. I know Jewish people that I love, that I got love for. Right? They're amazing people. Right? Like they're amazing people amongst us all. We're all technically amazing people. But you know, religion is something else, man. Religion is something else, and that shit confuses a lot of us. It conflates us, and you know, I wish melanated people had a love for something so much that they was willing to fight for it. Then I can speak to them about the stuff that we seeing, because us as a people, like we never had nothing that we was willing to fight for, to even understand why other people will push back the way that they do. We're a captive audience. You know what I'm saying? We kill each other over blocks that we don't own, you know, in front of public housing and shit like that. So we don't really get holding down a whole territory or a region. You know, we're not our ancestors in that respect. You know what I'm saying? They fought the good fight, and some of them, the majority of them, lost. But we don't hold on to that no more. We don't have pride in anything. You know what I'm saying? Where we're willing to sacrifice our lives. You know what I mean? We don't have a vehemence for our colonizer to that degree. Our colonizer is very comfortable, right? He already put down the rebellion. So he's able to move and live in a way in which the Israeli initially isn't. They still got to live under a militarized, occupied zone because they know how much wrong shit that they done. So look at the occupation. Look at the territory. Look at the Gaza Strip. Look what's left from what these people initially had, right? When the Brits came and decided that they was going to take their home and give it to these newly relocated, quote unquote, Europeans that was coming out post World War II after being wowed up by Hitler. Wow, they took the ex-Nazis, though, the U.S., and sent them niggas to the labs, created NASA and the CIA and a bunch of other shit. You feel me? But they're going to throw the motherfucking remnants over there and call that shit Israel. And that wasn't even the first option. You know what I mean? So it's man, they still fighting over Canaanite culture. So, right, you know, I mentioned this yesterday in my sermon. We had to go over this because all of this shit falls in line. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like we got to remind ourselves, we got to remind our people who the fuck they are, right? This whole shit like, yo, my nigga, if you in the Bible, dude, who are you? Like, what role do you play in scripture? You know what I mean? Like, you all caught up in this book. You all caught up in these narratives, my nigga. But who are you in the book? Because that should give you the signal about what side you should, where you should be at in these conflicts. If you can identify who you potentially are in the overall narrative. But if you can't do that, I don't know what my phone is doing right now. Y'all gotta give me a second, please. There we go. My page was stuck. Yeah, it's too much to unpack. I'm going through all of this extra. I'm like, yo, way too much. Genesis yesterday, Genesis 10:8, right? Genesis 10:8 speaks specifically about hold on. Yeah, off the break. Genesis speaks about the children of Ham, right? The Cushites, children of Mizraim, which is Kemet, and the Canaanites. Who are you? Who do you register as? Because you got all of these other people running around with your identity, and it's hard to say who's who and who's ain't because you don't know who you are. They're assuming your identity, and they got the whole world caught up in the mix, right? They out here shedding blood. You think that they willing to hand that shit back to you, and they out there dying for it? They out there really, really dying for it, my nigga. And they out there killing for it. And you think that they just gonna hand you back your identity? You feel me? Because you making claims on the internet? Or wherever else they were making these claims at? Right? The Hamites, the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Canaan. Right? And of course they get down to Nimrod, the son of Cush. So we know who the Cushites are. Those would be your Eritreans, Ethiopians, Sudanese, right? We know who the Mizraim is. That's the Cometian Egyptian people, right? Who are the Canaanites? Are you the children that are the cursed seed of Canaan, which are the cursed seed of Ham? Is that y'all? Or is it that them? Right? How did our identities get so confused and so mixed up? The sons of Ham should all be melanated people, But now we're having these conversations about Arab Muslims, and you telling me that they're the Ishmaelites and they're this and they're that. Who are you in this narrative, my nigga? Can you identify yourself? Because the sooner that you can do that, the sooner we can determine what your role in the script's supposed to be, and the sooner we can get motherfucking back in game. Because we're all paying a price for something that we don't clearly don't understand. And we feel as if, we're just captive. We're just a captive audience. No, you're a fucking captive. You're not just captive audience. You're also a captive. We being affected in our wallets. We being affected in our hearts and in our minds for something that allegedly has nothing to do with us, but very well can be having something. It can all have something to do with you based on who you identify yourself as. So if you're the person that has been usurped and somebody else is running around with your birthright, if somebody is running around with, not only access to your birthright, but access to your resources, but you over here fat lipping about any and everything that don't got nothing to do with nothing, you feel me? Then maybe that's why there's no balance in the world. Maybe that's why shit is so off balance. Because we're not taking our rightful place in this narrative and regulating. We're still held hostage in our own story. Trying to figure out where we at. But last year, everybody was saying that they was black Jews. I'm confused, my nigga. Help me out. Look, man, I ain't even gonna hold y'all. It's been great dialoguing and chatting with you, but I think that my job here is just about done. I wanna ask for and I don't know if I did all the proper preparation and planning for it, but I was planning to do a quantum meditation tomorrow at 11:11 a.m. and p.m. I may still go ahead with it. Just look out. I'll be posting, if we do go ahead with that. And if we don't do it on Tuesday, it'll be another day this week initially that we'll get it done. I think tomorrow will be great because tomorrow is governed by Aries. It's the day of war. And we will considerably be seeing an uptick in the engagement. They'll probably start the ground invasion tomorrow. So, there's a lot of things astrologically going on as well. If you know an astrologer, they can tell you some shit, right? All of this has astrological imperatives connected to it. So we wanna create some peace. We wanna conjure up some peace. We wanna conjure up some understanding. We wanna conjure up some clarity so we're not confused with what we see. I'm gonna pray for all life to be spared. Not just Palestinian life, Israeli life as well. You know what I'm saying? I don't get no pleasure out of seeing elderly, women and children. I don't really like seeing nobody die. Right? Even though we know about death and we know what it is, I don't like seeing people as collateral damage in conflicts, like especially civilians, right? I don't. If you suited and booted in military and you catch a slug, nigga, you signed up for that, right? That's what it is. That's part of the dance. I get it. But all of the bombing and the killing of children, the kidnapping of innocents and things of that nature, I mean, none of that shit sits well with me in my heart as a human being, right? I don't want to see any of that because, the things that you fail to call out today be the shit that knocks on your door tomorrow. So I wouldn't want that for my babies. I would not want to be that parent. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, if you want to understand, what's the metric that you utilize to show compassion for other people, who you praying for, and things of that nature, it's unilateral. It's across the board, right? I would not want to be the parent watching my child in a cage and I'm online and I can't do nothing about it. I wouldn't want to be that. And I damn sure would not want to be that father that has to carry his baby out of a collapsed building with the brains hanging out. I wouldn't want to be that person either. So we're not going to play the semantics of who versus who. We're going to say a unilateral call and conjuring for peace and diplomacy and intervention, divine intervention at this time, right? Something has to happen that comes in the middle of this fracas. You feel me? Because planetarily wise, things are very fragile right now, and we do not want the spirit and the energy of all-out war to encapsulate this planet. We don't want to see that. We don't want that trickling. Oh, we already know that there's some shit going on in our own communities and our own blood. You see people popping off on the airway, on the airlines, and you see shit taking place that's exasperated. You know that there's something going on energy-wise that you really can't put the words to. But you know that they ain't have to flip that switch last Wednesday for there to be zombies, because people is moving towards a catacombic zombie state already. I don't know if you notice it in society. We don't need no extra pushes towards going towards darkness and Maccabee shit, because we're moving into Scorpion season as well. You feel me? So, there's so many things that can potentially go wrong and open up the gates of hell. World War III is definitely a spiritual war, right? And this country is definitely already softly engaged in World War III. If you need me to explain something, please be specific and I'll explain it before I get off here. Just so we can have clarity. I don't want you to leave here and not understand what I said and either misinterpret it, or I damn sure don't want you to walk away in fear, right? So we got to lead in love. You feel me? I'm not engaging in any toxic communication, conversations back and forth online or offline, right? I'm just not answering the phone. I'm paying you no mind. You feel me? Now's not the time, because things can go very bad potentially, especially when it's this energy and spirit of war that's around us and death. So I'm able to see in situations like this, like, nah, my nigga, we really don't got problems. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to see you blown up. And that's the extent of where things are going today. That people don't like one another, and they're taking it to the degree, not hate, they don't like one another, and they want to see people blown up. There are people that are celebrating on my timeline because, you know, they're seeing the other side get killed heinously. And people they find pride in that. I'm like, yo, this is not even military fighting military. It's military fighting civilians. And you finding pleasure out of that? I mean, you some sick motherfuckers. But I get it. We are also in that place with, we live in a very Maccabee society, and there's a lot of sick motherfuckers. And sick is almost normal. You hear, and I saw pictures of crows eating up the Israeli flag the other day. That was an ominous sign, because I remember I read a scripture not too long ago that was speaking about the presence of crows. You know, maybe in last week's sermon. Celebrating. My nigga, I just came off Twitter space. They're celebrating. They're celebrating everywhere that I go. You know, that you can hear it in the voice of people, especially that ethnically identify themselves as Jewish. When they feel like they're being attacked, when they feel like they're at war, right? Their Bible has already told them, you feel me? You kill everything, including the fucking dogs. So, I don't want to say it's hypocritical that these same people would say, oh my God, how can you kidnap children? How can you do this to the elderly? My nigga, the whole Bible is full of that. When y'all go to wash people up, you wash up them and the livestock. I'm just saying, I don't like seeing it, but I damn sure be reading it. You know what I'm saying? And this is damn sure in these people's legacy, because that's how they go to war. Right? So you're going to tell the Palestinian people to evacuate Palestine and there's no way in and there's no way out. There's only two borders. One is in Israel and the other is in Egypt. Right? You're going to send them people, all them people is going to flush through Egypt. That's not going to happen. So they're utilizing this as an excuse to go out and flatten out Gaza and massacre them people, elderly, children, women, right? And then people are going to justify it and celebrate it to say, oh, it was some crazy niggas flying on paratroopers into a rave concert and they kidnapped some people. Yeah, we can't do the 100 lives for one shit. We can't do the 1,000 lives for one. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's life is worth something. Everybody's life has value. Everybody's a one-to-one. Right? All of this minimizing people's humanity because of where they live or who they were born to or what their economic dispositions are, right? That's the same energy of depopulation. That's that same shit. Yeah. So the crows is going crazy, you know. These crows been going crazy. And I was telling y'all about the crows like 2 weeks ago. The crows were fighting the hawks in front of my crib. And the crows were winning. You know what I'm saying? So we make observations and take signs from nature. So we gotta conjure peace. We gotta pray for a breakthrough. Right? It's within us. We have the wherewithal to call upon peace. You know what I'm saying? We have the wherewithal to create, at least a layer of peace around ourselves, that we're not tormented by the things that we may potentially see come out of this. Right? So again, I love life, I love love, you know what I'm saying? And I love self. You feel me? I love my people. And I love humanity. I love the idea of us all, getting along. You know what I'm saying? So, however we got to go about doing that, I think that we have, once again, let's raise our voice and let our voice be heard. You know what I'm saying? For those of us that do want to see peace prevail, those of us that do want to see some level of a divine intervention, because I don't want to see the bombs. I don't want to see the guts. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to see people cheering on other people's death and destruction. You feel me? Especially when none of that smoke goes towards the people who really, really deserve it. You know what I mean? And them is the people that got you in this position to begin with, to this day. They don't get no smoke. None of the smoke filters back to them. And I'm talking about the Vatican, right? They don't ever get no blowback. Nobody got no smoke for them. They get to wiggle out of this. And we always left with the bit players in the theater play. Those are all, what we looking at now, these are all bit players. These ain't no real players on the board. These are all bit players. All of these people have been indoctrinated and programmed with either truth or lies. You feel me? To become like crash test dummies. So, yeah, we're gonna put a prayer out. Like I said, if I decide to get it in at 11 a.m., I'll put the notification out. And if for whatever reason we don't do it tomorrow, but tomorrow would be the best day to do it, and we don't catch 11 p.m., there'll be another day. Maybe we need to keep a regular quantum collective prayer meditation going, just so there's something, a buffer somewhere at all times, this raising the vibration. We got to bring the sound bowls out. We got to hit the ohms, and we got to get into our personal visualization to call upon Creator to be like, yo, these are your children, man. You better, yeah. You better get in between this shit and start refereeing it. You feel me? You better get in between it, because this shit gonna be a holy war in no time. And it's going to be Allah versus Jehovah, however crazy that is. Because I do believe, yes, there's one universal source, and we identify it by many names. And please, I don't want to get into, because it's like, just even speaking like that, I'm inviting myself to have a firefight with somebody that got a different religious belief. And it's like, that's cool, man. This is what I'm talking about. I don't want to fight you because of what you believe. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to fight you because of what you believe. You know what I mean? At the same time, I do want to acknowledge that there's a creative force. And I don't know if that creative force is necessarily out here picking sides. Especially in something as ugly as war. You feel me? It's something as ugly as war. Right? We need an intervention. All right, with that, peace.